welcome back to another episode of the IBC Guys. I'm Dave. This is Mike. We got a good one in store for you today, and one of the reasons is it's the second time we're doing it. So we got done with the first time, and Mike's like, "Dave, we can do that better." I was like, "I'm all for it." So then we worked through it a little bit further, and it's another reason it's a good one is because it's going to be a two-parter. So we're going to start today, part one, talk through using IBC to buy a car. And then we're going to work through call them the essentials. And then we're going to get a little more granular in part two and talk about questions that are often asked. So bad for the listeners, bad for the viewers. We solved all the world's problems in the last episode that will never make it to the light of day. Where Jimmy Hoffa was buried, where DB Cooper's money is. The guy, Bigfoot is just a guy named Steve living in the woods. We had all the answers, but the problem with that is it took too long and we didn't get to the meat of IBC. So we're going to do that today. Before we jump in, I get to do all the IBC stuff. We exist for three reasons. One, we want to provide education. Our whole goal in doing this podcast is we want to get the information in people's hands and then allow them to make the decision for themselves. So you listen to what we have to say. It's not for you. That makes us just as happy as if you get a policy because you have the information, you can make a decision. The second thing is we want to provide practical, applicable, implementable information. So here's what it looks like to do these things. Our last episode was how to leverage IBC in purchasing real estate. So Mike took us through that. That was kind of a cool one. We can certainly get more detailed about what that looks like, but how to use IBC to create velocity and money in purchasing real estate. So if you haven't listened to that one, go listen to it. It was a good one. The last one, we want to give you a resource. Reach out to us. My email is dave@familybankingsolutions.com. Mike's is mike@familybankingsolutions.com. Mike, I think I shared this with you, but I had a friend in South Dakota reach out to me. Never had that happen before. Don't know anybody in South Dakota, but now I do. I guess I should say I didn't know anybody in South Dakota, but now I do. So that was fun for me. So if you can reach out, it makes our day. Give us a call. We have a phone number, 507-205-2284. Either Mike and I or I will answer that. It's not, somebody that's helping us out. It's either of us. So give us a call that way. And then finally, if you would do all the podcasting things, share, like, send it to your grandma, your aunt maybe mowing the lawn and needs something to listen to. I don't know. Send it around. Help us get the information out. It would be helpful in getting the word out. And that, again, is the goal. Number one reason from the onset. All right, podcast stuff out of the way. I don't like the beginnings of these, Mike, because I talk a whole bunch, but I'm going to talk some more. Nelson Nash. I call you the godfather of IBC, but I'll give it to you. Nelson Nash is the godfather of IBC. So Nelson Nash, he introduces, the concept in his book, but in part three, he talks about purchasing an automobile and the different methods to do that. So he lays out 5 methods. So the first one is, I got these written down, make sure I get them correct. First one is to lease it. So you can do that through, the car company itself. The second one is to use a banking institution to do that. Look at you. Mike's getting fancy sharing it up. The second one's using a finance banking situation. I'm sorry. If you're listening, Mike threw up something on the screen. The third one is to use cash. So you save, a shoebox under your bed, throwing cash at it. You can just go pay cash to the dealership to buy a car. And the last two is where he spends his time focusing. And that's what Mike's putting up here on the screen right now. He talks apples to apples about leveraging a CD versus leveraging IBC. And then same money in, what does the money coming out look like? And what does that look like extrapolated over several years? So that's where we're going to kind of spend our time today. So that starts on the chart that Mike put up is on page 45. So back it up a couple pages, say 42 is where this all starts. If you have the book, have mine right here. I'm going to throw it up on screen if you're watching on YouTube. So becoming your own banker. Mike's got it up on screen too. So we're giving you a double whammy. But if you haven't purchased that, I threw this offer out the last time we recorded this. I'll do the same here. I have few of these around. I don't know how many I have, But if you want one, I'll get you one. Consider it a free gift from your new buddy Dave. If you want becoming your own banker, shoot me an email, give me a phone call. I'll get a copy to you to the extent that I have in my office here. And again, I don't remember how many I have. It's several. So it's like calling into the radio station. You got to be the first five callers or something. I don't know how many I have, but I'll get you one if I have them because I want to get this information into people's hands. All right. Started with a little context summary, Mike. Part three, Nelson's book. I'm gonna hand it over to you and let you take the reins.
Yeah, and as Dave mentioned, this is the comparison that Nelson uses in his book, where he's basically illustrating five methods of basically having the use of an automobile over a 44-year period of time, kind of over one's lifetime. And those five methods are leasing a vehicle or financing a vehicle through a bank or through Ford Credit or through some financial institution where you're using someone else's money and they are charging you interest for that use. So obviously option A and option B are going to be the most expensive. And then the last three options that Nelson talks about is using cash or storing that money instead of storing the cash in a safe at your home. It's using a bank and a commercial certificate of deposit. And then option or method E would be using an IBC system. So I am going to talk briefly about those last three options. And on page 45 in Nelson's book, he compares method D and method E using the CD at a commercial bank and using an IBC policy and comparing the two. But real briefly, we're going to get into the weeds of this in a second follow-up part two podcast, as Dave mentioned. But I'm real briefly just going to go through what's happening here and what Nelson is illustrating. So all three of these methods, we're going to do the exact same thing, okay? Dollar for dollar, every year, every penny we put in, all three methods, we're going to do exactly the same and compare, okay? So, you with me so far, Dave?
I'm with you.
Okay, so let's take the cash option. We are going to accumulate cash because we're going to pay cash for our vehicles, and we are going to buy a $10,550 vehicle every 4 years. For 44 years, we're going to buy 11 vehicles over the course of 44 years. But first, we have to capitalize. We have to save up the cash. We're going to say put it in our safe at home. So we're going to put $5,000 a year in for 7 years and save up $35,000. And then starting in year 8, we're going to go into that safe and we're going to take $10,500 out to go buy a vehicle. And then we're going to kind of pay ourselves back, put money back in the safe so we can continue doing this. And we're going to put $3,030 back in that safe every year for 4 years. And then we're going to turn around and go out and buy another vehicle for $10,000, trade that in and pay $10,550 towards a new vehicle, whatever. So we're going to do that over the course of 44 years. We're going to buy 11 vehicles. Now, if we take out $10,550 out of the safe and we put back in $3,030 for 4 years, that's $12,120. So we're essentially adding another $1,570 each time we buy a vehicle, okay? If you go into your safe and you take $10,550 out to buy a vehicle and then you put back in $12,120, you've kind of added in another $1,570 into your system, into your safe. Fair enough?
So I do. Can I pause here real quick? I have a couple clarifying questions to ask. I think we went through that very quickly. Maybe in part two, we're going to go through that a little bit more in the cash aspect. But to recap, for the first 7 years, we put $5,000 in, $35,000. Then starting in year 8, we're putting in $3,030, but we're also purchasing a car. Is that another way to say what you were trying to describe, Mike?
Yes.
And then each subsequent year, $3,030 in, $3,030 in. But each fourth year, think skip counting back in second grade. Every 4 years, we're buying a $10,550 car. Is that the situation that's going on?
Yes.
Okay. So we have that established. If I can, I'm going to go back and ask a question. And I'm sorry I didn't pipe in earlier and ask this, Mike. But the question is, you jumped straight to method C. Why did we not talk about methods A and B?
Well, method A and B, you're using someone else's money, and there is going to be a cost for that money, and you're going to be paying interest. And that's going to be those two options are going to be the most expensive. So we're talking about the last three options here because we know those three options are going to be less expensive than the first two.
Well, and you're hitting on exactly what my goal in asking the question was, Mike. I knew you were going to answer that way because that's why we do IBC. We want to get the banks to stop making money off of people, and we want them to start becoming their own bank. We want that money to flow back to them and stay in their families for as long as we can. So A and B. I mean, I've financed the car. I mean, it's not a wrong thing, but it costs me more money to do that. So it's not morally inappropriate. It just costs me more money. So we skipped over methods A and B because we want to jump straight to C, D, and E because that's going to be what financially is best for our family. And then we're going to take C, D, and E and do apples to apples comparison, is my understanding of where we're headed. Would you agree with that?
Correct.
All right. So jumping back, we're talking to cash, and I'm sorry to rabbit trail on you, but I wanted to establish $5,000 for the first 5 or 7 years, excuse me, and then each subsequent year, 3,030 in. We're gonna buy a $10,550 car, and then skip count every 4 years buying that car. But every year we're gonna put in $3,030 from that point on. And where is it gonna get us at the end? That's what we're gonna explore for each one of these methods. So, all right, commandeering your time, but I wanted to kind of back up and make sure that I was as clear as I could be.
Well, yeah, and maybe I'm getting into the weeds a little bit on this comparison, but the cash option we're going to put in $35,000. Let's say you put that $35,000 into your safe in your home, so you're not making any interest off of it.
Sure. Yeah.
But you're storing up some cash so you can go out and buy a vehicle every year, and at the same time you're putting money back in, or buying a vehicle, excuse me, every 4 years, but you're putting money back in. So eventually your safe's going to run out of money if you don't start putting the money back in and kind
Yeah,
of paying.
that makes sense.
So
Sure.
just to kind of summarize on the cash option is you're putting in $35,000 to start with. You're going to buy a $10,550 vehicle every 4 years for 11 years. And at the end of that 44 years, you will have bought 11 vehicles and you have $52,270 in your safe. Okay, you started with $35,000. You took $10,550 out to buy a vehicle, but you put $12,120 back in. So you're adding a little bit. You're adding $1,570 each time you buy a vehicle. Okay,
Sure.
so if you add $1,570 11 times for the 11 vehicles, you've added $17,270 to your safe. And at the end of that time period, you would have $52,270. Not bad, right? Not bad. So again, real quickly to compare the three, the cash option, you put in $35,000, you buy 11 vehicles over 44 years, and at the end of that time, let's say you start when you're 20. So this illustrated here for those of you that are watching the video, in year 51. So when you're 71 years old, the cash option is you're going to have 52,270. Whereas let's go to the second option here on putting the money into a CD. If you do the same thing, you put, instead of putting that $35,000 into your safe, you put it into a certificate of deposit, so you're earning some interest. Again, apples to apples, you do $5,000 a year for 7 years, just like the cash option, and do the same thing. buying the vehicle that we talked about with the first option, buying, using cash. If you use a certificate of deposit, and I'm lagging here, I apologize. That's why I shut my video off. Hopefully it wouldn't lag as much. But using a CD versus your safe at home, at the end of 51 years, at the end of kind of your lifetime of driving cars, you're going to have $259,000 versus $52,000 just using cash from your safe. So why is that $200,000 more? Because your money is earning interest in the CD. So obviously the CD
option, quick, Mike? That's an important detail though for the CD that's not mentioned on this chart. In Nelson's example, the CD is getting 5.5%, if I remember correctly. Is that correct?
Correct.
So I don't know if people are more, astute with CDs than I am right now, but I don't think they're making even close to that right now.
Not even.
In his example, it's 5.5%. For those of you that are mathematically inclined, that's important knowledge if you're going to start working through the numbers yourself. 5.5% for the CD.
Yeah, and again, it's over $200,000 more that you would have left if you choose to set up your vehicle financing system, let's say your cash flow system using a CD, because your money is earning interest, whereas if you're just putting this money in your safe using the cash option, you're obviously making zero interest. So the CD option would be $200,000 better at the end of this 44 years buying vehicles than the cash option. Okay, so now let's look at the IBC option, putting this money into an IBC policy versus the CD, which Nelson explains on page 45 that he illustrates. So again, same exact thing, apples to apples. Every year we're doing the exact same thing. $5,000 a year for 7 years. We put in $35,000, not to a safe or not to a commercial bank, but now we're putting it into a policy. And then every 4 years, we're buying a $10,550 car and putting that money back in, the same amount back in. Well, cash option again, at the end of that 51 years, the cash option using your safe at home, you would have $52,270. Using a commercial bank in a CD, as Dave said, earning 5.5% a year, you would have almost $259,000. Using a IBC policy, you would have $964,000.
That's crazy.
$705,000 more than the commercial bank. So which one of those would you rather do, Dave? The cash option, the CD option, or the IBC option?
And you put me on the spot like this, Mike. I have to make a decision. But I think I'd go with the IBC option.
It's kind of a no-brainer. $705,000 more than the CD. Now, we started this when we were 20. We financed 11 vehicles over 44 years. And now here in year 52 of our system, we're now 72 years of age because we started when we're 20. Now we want some passive income at 72 years of age. The cash system, everyone's going to take $50,000 a year out. Okay, if you remember the cash option in our safe, we have $52,270. Well, if we take $50,000 out the first year as passive income,
yeah,
we're going to be out of money pretty quick in the second.
Pretty quickly. It's not going to last too long.
Okay. In the CD option, we have almost $259,000. So if we take $50,000 out a year, as Nelson illustrates here on page 45 in his book, we can take out $50,000 a year for 5 years and 8 months. But in that 6th year, about 8 months in, we are going to run out of money. Now, comparing that to the IBC option, we take $50,000 a year out every year for as long as we live and never run out of money. And again, as Nelson illustrates here, this is down to where, you're 84 years old. You're still taking $50,000 a year out and your cash value is growing every year. It's not going down.
I think that's what gets me, if I can interject, Mike. You're taking $50,000 out, and you're dead. I mean, it's contractually guaranteed almost. Well, it is, but you're adding money to you're making money while still taking the $50,000 out. That, and I know that kind of varies, but that is awesome. I know maybe our culture overuses that word, but to have something do that for you that you set up by funding, you know, $5,000 for the first 7 years, you let it grow over time, and you make money as you take $50,000. $50,000 is a substantial amount of money, and you're taking that out to help you live and maintain a lifestyle, but it's continuing to grow. And then there's an added part to it, that far right column we haven't even talked about, and maybe you'll get to it, but that's also an exciting part. And I don't want to steal your thunder, but I wanted to
Yeah, it
reiterate.
is.
Well,
It
I wanted to
absolutely is.
reiterate just the growth that happens, even though that $50,000 is still coming out. So again, I'm sorry for jumping in, but it gets me excited, and I can't help myself. So continue.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
so the last thing, as Dave mentioned, we wanted to touch on here is the cash option. You start taking $50,000 a year out passive income, and basically by January of year two, you're broke. You have no more money to live on, no more passive income, and as far as leaving a legacy or a chunk of money to your beneficiary for a financial legacy, you're basically broke. Okay, so there's nothing there.
Can I add some
The
context to that to Mike? Oh, goodness, context to that, please, Mike. The discipline it would take to do that for 44 years in a shoebox with cash, I think is very admirable. One of the reasons we do this, though, Mike, is to get the information out because we don't want someone to find themselves in that situation. They were diligent with the money that they had over and over and over, saving it, saving up, buying what's a respective car. $10,500 car is not, you're not driving an Audi S60 or excuse me, Mercedes S60 or whatever they are. You're buying a respectable car, but the discipline, I think that's admirable. What we want people to be able to do, though, is have this knowledge to move into these next columns and hopefully the far right one, because it's what we deem as the best. But the discipline it takes, I don't want someone to find they've done all the right things, but to find themselves at their end of their life in that situation where they don't have the necessary means to continue less than others, maybe is a good way to put it. That's all.
Yeah, back to leaving a legacy. The cash option, you're not going to be able to leave a legacy. You're not even going to be able to survive in year two if the
Yeah.
passive income from this is all you have. Using the CD, you take $50,000 a year out. Like we said, you can last about 5 years and 8 months. But again, then you're out of money and you're not leaving any legacy to your beneficiary loved ones either. However, with the IBC method, using a life insurance policy, a specially designed life insurance policy, not only can you take 50,000 a year out for the rest of your life and not only never run out of money, but your cash value actually never goes down. As Nelson illustrates here, it continues to go up every year. And then when you die, again, this shows if you die at 84, you're leaving $1.365 million to your loved ones, to your beneficiary. And this death benefit increases every year. Well, what if I didn't die at 84? What if I died at 94? That death benefit is going to be higher. And he illustrates that on the following pages in his book as well. But again, in summary, we just want to show here that number one, all three of these systems, you're kind of becoming your own banker. You're kind of capitalizing a system to where you can start paying for things, in this example, a vehicle, without using a financial institution's money. You're using your own money, your own banking system. So all three of these options are doing that. So when we talk about, the IBC system, it's not necessarily using a specially designed life insurance policy. It's just that's the best method. It's way better than using a safe or shoebox in your home. And it's way better than using a certificate of deposit at a commercial bank. But as Dave mentioned, all three of these are, very respectable in that you're capitalizing a system and using your own money and not someone else's money.
Mm.
So, and again, this is just an example. We don't want people to think, well, this. If I want to do this, set up my own IBC cash flow system, it's $5,000 a year. No, you can put in whatever amount you want to put in. It doesn't have to be for 7 years. It can be for more. It can be for less. I have to wait until year 8 before I start financing a car, as Nelson illustrates here. No, we typically set people up and we start using the available money right away to start banking with that money that you have capitalized already. So again, this is just skimming the surface. We can get into the mechanics of this in part 2, but this is just illustrating an example. If you did 5,000 a year, if you did it for 7 years, apples to apples to apples, which one would be better? Cash, a certificate of deposit in a commercial bank, or putting it into an IBC system and a specially designed policy? Which one of those 3 methods would be best for you and your family? And I think we've illustrated that, and Nelson illustrates it. It's a no-brainer, Dave. I mean, looking at the death benefit you leave, looking at the passive income you can take, looking at the $705,000 advantage you have over a commercial bank. It's a no-brainer that setting up an IBC system is the best thing for your family.
So you kind of alluded to it, and that's what we're going to talk about in part 2, but are the variables. But a question that it comes to my mind that I have certainly asked, and that my guess is a lot of people listening that maybe are continuing to learn about IBC. Let's say we don't, the variables are different. I only have $2,000 a year, Mike, and I only put it in for 4 years. Is IBC still going to be the best method? Is the answer always yes?
Yeah, 100%.
It's all, I guess I want to make sure that's implicitly asked and then implicitly answered. The answer is always yes. We design these policies to always be better than the other things you're going to get because you are getting the money back. You're not paying other people to use your money. They're not loaning it out and making themselves money. The money that the bank would garner is coming back to you. And over time, it is not a get rich quick scheme. But over time, that money grows uninterrupted exponentially. So if you know those mathy words, there's no break in how it's growing. And the exponential aspect means it's not a line, it's not consistent. I like to use the term hockey stick. Once that thing hockey sticks, you grow, 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 and then it starts to shoot up. And in the 44th year, that 51st year, when you're 71, 84, whatever the age we were talking about, your hockey stick is already hockey sticked. And you're getting that money, you're using it, and then the death benefit aspect is on the side. And the death benefit is often kind of off to the side and talking through the system. But going back to my original point, IBC, in my experience, is always better. Someone has yet to prove to me that it's not always better when you compare apples to apples. Same consistency, same, capitalization, same yearly outtake or purchasing a car or purchasing a boat. Maybe you're a guy likes to buy a boat every 4 years. I don't know. Whatever you're purchasing on, as long as everything's apples to apples, IBC is always going to be better. And that's a bold claim, maybe, to hear for a lot of people to hear. But I have yet to experience a situation where that's not true. So you can educate me, Mike. You can educate me live here, I guess live on the podcast. But I think you have found that to be the same thing. Would you agree with that?
100%. It's for everything. That's why Nelson, it's called the infinite banking concept because it's for an infinite amount of things. It's not just a vehicle. So as Dave was mentioning, how does that be $5,000? Can it be more? Can it be less? If you're buying a vehicle today, it's probably not a $10,550 vehicle. That just happens to be what Nelson, I think his wife had, and that's the example that he used. Now you want to go buy a vehicle, you're probably looking at something like $50,000 instead of $10,000. But it doesn't have to be a vehicle. This can be your, I think everybody nowadays has a cell phone It can be your cell phone bill. It can be your, your monthly budget. It can be taxes. Whatever you run through your system, run through your checkbook. I think this illustrates the fact that, okay, well, I'm paying cash for groceries. I'm paying cash for my mortgage or rent. I'm paying cash for whatever. And, people don't really equate there's any interest to that. I'm just writing a check for, whatever, grocery bill, cell phone bill. But we just illustrated that if you use an IBC system to do that versus a banking system where a lot of people have a checking account, even though it's not a CD and it's not interest bearing, or just paying cash, IBC is a better option. Over time, everything that you run through there, you're going to be way better off over time than you would be if you're just paying cash or using your checkbook or using a CD. So yes, it's an infinite amount of things you can do that with.
Well, I appreciate. I feel like I've rabbit trailed several times. I get too excited, Mike. So I apologize for that if I did get off topic too much. But I want to make sure. My hope is to ask the questions I'm thinking people are asking, and if I'm not, let us know. Email us, call us. So again, the number is 507-205-2284. My email is dave@familybankingsolutions.com. Mike's is mike@familybankingsolutions.com. If you have questions or if you think this is a bunch of hogwash, let us know. Let's have a chat because we enjoy having those discussions. And when apples to apples, as long as the definitions are consistent between both understandings, we have the same numeric values, we're doing the same things. IBC, it's a no-brainer to use Mike's terms. So part two, we talked about this before. This is part one. We're going to jump into part two. If you were watching online on YouTube and you were looking at Mike's chart, or maybe you've already looked at page 45 in Nelson's book, if you notice the first couple years, there may be a question in your mind. Why does IBC look a lot lower in terms of monetary value, numeric value, than the CD does? And why does that trend continue till you're about 7 or 8? There's quote unquote less money in there. We're going to talk about why that may look that way and how to look at it correctly through the lens of IBC. We're going to also get a little more granular into some of these methods and talk through that. So join us next time. Part two is coming up. Again, we're going to talk through, this is a very relevant example, buying a car. And to talk through everything we can, I think is beneficial in getting this information out there. Mike, we got a couple minutes. Anything last you want to say before we jump into part two?
No, that sounds good. I think we probably got maybe a little more into the weeds than we wanted to, but that'll be we'll save that for the second episode.
No, I like it. It's fun to get in the weeds. That's where all the good stuff is. So we'll jump more into it. Hopefully, we get to see you. I guess we're not going to see you. Hopefully, you get to see us and listen to us in this next episode. But join us if you would. And one last request: do all the podcasty things. Share, like, send it to whomever you can. Just have that education be given in terms of an opportunity to others so they can listen and make a decision for themselves. If we can ask that of you, we're going to do that. All right. We'll look forward to seeing you in part two coming up here.